Okay, Brambro back with some Grand Tactician Civil War CSA campaign in the 1.06 beta. As I often say at the start of an episode, there's a fair amount to talk about. Okay, the biggest item. Since the last episode was recorded and posted, there has been an update to 1.06. We're now up to 1.0627. Which incorporates several new changes. The big one is that the overall size of the economy has been radically altered. Everything is more expensive, about 3 times. I say everything. Buildings and projects are more expensive, about 3 times what they were. However, subsidies are also about 3 times what they were, roughly speaking. That's just ballpark number. Tariff and taxes revenues are much higher. Okay, so the overall size of the economy has grown, and as a result, there's a lot of things that are way more expensive. Okay, for example, these federal buildings, hospitals used to cost about $1.5 million. Now they are $4.4 million. Markets used to be just a hair under $1 million. They are now $2.9 million. And these numbers kind of vary slightly depending on where you place them sometimes. News agency, 2.9. Prison camp, 4.4. Right. The private buildings, the company buildings like ironworks and farms and stuff, they are more expensive as well. Here's an example. This lumber mill, I could build a lumber mill, and it is over 80% funded. The cost of this thing would be mostly subsidies, but even placing it, it would still cost me $2.8 million. So if you extrapolate that out, the total cost of a lumber mill is about $15 million now. That's much higher than it was before. And that's true for all of these. The ironworks, the foundries, the farms. You know, this farm is about, 35%, 40% funded with subsidies. And it would cost me $11 million to place a farm. So those have all come up a lot. Let's just take a quick look at the finance screen. However, and I'd have to go back and look at an older video when I had this screen open to remember what the exact numbers are, but these numbers for the subsidy levels are much higher. 50 million for industry, 25 million now for military. I think we were at 10 before, maybe even 5. So the subsidies have all gotten bigger too, which mean and they fill at the same rate, right? So these bars down here are still going to fill at about the same rate they were before, roughly speaking. It's just the numbers are much bigger. Tariff revenues, and I haven't even run time yet, so these numbers, these numbers over here could change a lot as soon as we've run a couple days. These are much higher than they were before as well. Okay. So the economy is simply much bigger on both the expenses and the revenue side. One might ask, why did they do this? My basic answer is, I don't know. I think the idea is, and I had remarked on this several times, at the beginning of the campaign, as I was first getting familiar with, okay, what the heck is a market? How much does that cost? And my frame of reference was still in 1.05, not even in 1.06. And everything looked really, really expensive from that mindset. And then as the campaign goes on and we recruit armies, we build projects, we build buildings, And the credit rating didn't move. We stayed in the A's. And even before today's change, well, by now, yesterday's change, we only dropped into BBB plus very recently after some enormous weapons orders. So my impression is that wasn't quite what they were going for. And it was felt, apparently, that the economy was simply not having a big enough effect on credit rating. And as players realized that, it became just kind of, well, you can actually spam a lot. You can actually spam a lot of this stuff a lot more than it initially looked. That is kind of the 2 and 2 that I'm putting together. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think so. I think that was the idea. So, bottom line, I don't know that much has really changed. The costs are much higher, but the availability of credit and income is also much higher. But we're just going to have to keep a much closer eye on this credit rating. I'm a little concerned that I'm going to start running time, and pretty soon this thing is just going to fall off a cliff. Because I did spend a lot of money. But we'll see how that goes. Okay. And I'll throw out one observation. Right? This is a beta. This is where big changes are supposed to be experimented with and see how it goes before they go live, right? So it's a beta. You plays the beta, you takes your chances. So, I don't think it's anything to get upset about. I was initially a little miffed, but, it's a beta. I'd much rather them, that's what it's for. So, okay. So I think we may have some stuff to unlearn, stuff to relearn. And that's about all I have to say about that. Okay, let me address a couple of comments from recent episodes. Someone had noticed, hey, you have this weapons production project. Why haven't you used that? Which is a good question, because that is an attractive looking project. If we look at that, let me sort. Yeah, here it is. So weapons production is on the military side, but this is an industrial level or an industrial subsidy project. And what does it do? Further increases weapons production efficiency, which sounds great, and probably is. Okay. However, industrial subsidies also go to, there aren't many, but the ones that are over here are pretty big. Infrastructure reform to increase transport capacity of all the nation's IPs, and subsidized industry to increase overall industrial productivity, which, oh, by the way, would include ironworks, which are what produce weapons. If I were to put industrial subsidies into projects at all, I would probably default over here to one or both of these before going specifically with weapons production. And that's if I was putting industrial subsidies into projects in the first place. Because the other thing that uses industrial subsidies are brickworks, foundries, ironworks, lumber mills, factories. And I've built some of these. I've built at least one factory. I know I built another foundry. We built a brickworks. I could actually build another one, but I think we're fine on bricks now. And matter of fact, it's even, well, it's telling me. Anyway, I've built some of these, and that's what I've been using industrial subsidies for, and that is why I have not taken any levels of weapons production. I'm not saying it's useless or not good. I'm just saying there's other good things, and, I prioritize other things higher. Okay. The next item, I just want to review is actually slightly semi-embarrassing. And that has to do with manpower. Theme of the last couple episodes has been our initial campaign start contracts were expiring. They were 12 months, and our re-enlistment ratio looked like a lot of those, like an overwhelming majority of those guys were not going to come back. So the first wave of that has occurred, and it turned out not to be nearly as bad as it looked. It looked like we were actually getting kind of pretty standard re-enlistment rates that we would expect from other campaigns in the past, before 1.06. There's still an issue because basically this re-enlistment ratio number at the bottom of the tooltip, as far as I can tell, is just flat wrong. Because it looked to me, looking at the brigade sizes after they expired and shifted to 36-month contracts, it looked to me like those brigades were retaining well over 50% of their men, in some cases even as high as 60%. So even though that's a scary looking number in the tooltip, don't have a re-enlistment ratio problem. Do have a problem in that that's just an incorrect number being displayed. So that, that's still an issue. I don't know why it's showing so low. However, in the policies, it's actually an act. I don't know how many hundred hours of this game I've played. I think it's about 400-ish, which is not nearly as many as some, but that's enough for, I don't know, I've probably played 7 or 8 campaigns in this game. And I've never noticed this. In the Conscription Act, up toward the top, there is a statement: existing volunteer contracts are lengthened to 3 years. Someone pointed that out in a comment to the last episode, and straight up, I have never noticed that before. I get a bad habit that I have is on the vast majority of these policy tooltips, kind of the early part of the text is kind of blah, blah, blah text, verbal, describing, and then the actual effects are kind of listed toward the bottom. Like, national morale, -2, speed of replacement, plus 50%. In this case, no. I needed to read the whole thing, and I guess I just never have. So, what does this mean? It means that even if I don't want to ever actually use draftee soldiers, this is still a very, very valuable act. Because just in terms of contract length, okay, that's only one aspect. But from that side of things, this act bypasses the contract length aspects of Militia Acts 2 and 3. That's the way I read this. I mean, it doesn't say extended to whatever your current Militia Act limit is. It says lengthened to 3 years. So that's got to be whether or not you've researched 3-year contracts or not. That's the way I read it. I mean, obviously I haven't done it. I just learned about it. So that's something that I intend to kind of check out in a previous campaign, or actually, if anyone knows the answer to that, I'd love to hear it if you've already done this. This kind of falls under the category of probably everybody watching knows this. It's like, well, duh, didn't everybody know that? And Bram's finally catching up to everybody else. If I had registered that, yeah, I would have taken Conscription Act earlier. And in fact, now, as soon as government funding is done, I am going to take Conscription Act next. This is about 2 weeks. Conscription takes about 4 weeks, so we're about 6 weeks away. I'm hoping that I'll complete that in time to catch the next round of 1-year contract expirations, which are currently projected to be about 2 months away. Even if I don't, and those guys expire before I get this complete, I still have a lot of 24-month contract brigades out there in the armies as well, particularly in D.H. Hill's Corps and in Garnett's Corps. So, still worth doing, and that's the near-term plan for ACTS, policies and ACTS. Did not know this. And just to loop back around, that does not make Militia Act 2 and 3 irrelevant. Still, I feel I still see these as extremely valuable because they also increase recruitment quotas. So, still very, very much worth taking for the volunteer manpower pool. And as I said a moment ago, conscription still great even if you don't intend to use draftees. And the way to do that is, in the armies, you've got a toggle here for reinforced by volunteers and draftees, or volunteers only, or draftees only, right? Okay, so if I go through and I shift all the armies to volunteer only, I'm still sticking with my volunteer only method and keeping the morale of the brigades up because they're not using draft soldiers. But I think that setting the 3-year contracts for all forces. And oh, by the way, the Union draft, the counterpart, the Union draft doesn't have that, which is probably why I've never registered it before. Because I don't think I've ever played a CSA campaign. I was already kind of in the habit of not using the draft when I started playing CSA campaigns. And so, I've actually already kind of gone around. Nope, I need to do these guys too. Thought I'd gotten them all. I didn't. Okay, again, volunteer, 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 volunteer. I'm just cycling through, making sure I didn't miss any others. Yeah, everyone is on volunteers. Which I don't even have the act enabled yet. I just am doing it now so I don't forget. Okay, enough about conscription. That is a pretty strong thing that only the CSA gets. So that was definitely worth pointing out. And thank you very much to the commenter who finally clued me in and Bram's light bulb clicked on. Finally. Okay. I want to talk about one other thing that is not a 1.06 thing and isn't even directly coming from a comment in prior episodes of this campaign. But every once in a while I will see a comment like on Steam discussions or in the past about, the effect of disease doesn't seem to be, it just doesn't seem to be a factor in this game. And it's easy to see why people can get that impression. The truth is, it is a pretty big factor. The last battle we fought, therefore the last time that we took any battle casualties, was in this battle at Ohio River near Cincinnati, December 10th. And then because of the winter quarters, we've been quiet. Union's been quiet. We're now into the first week of May. So it has been almost 5 months since that battle. Haven't taken any combat casualties that entire time. How many men have we lost during that time? The answer may surprise some people. Manpower tooltip again. Manpower losses due to attrition. 52,000 men. And that's not 52,000 since that battle. That's 52,000 during the last 3 months. If we tracked it all the way back to early December, it would be higher. It might be 70 or 80,000 men that we have lost to attrition. Losses to disease and sickness, yeah, that's in the game. And that's not new 1.06. That's always been in the game. We lose a lot of men to attrition. But it doesn't seem like it unless you're kind of hawking the manpower, because if I click on, now Longstreet lost some men for contract expiration, but if you've got an otherwise good shape army, it's in supply and the morale, all that kind of stuff, we don't see those. We see them holding steady or gradually increasing due to growing brigades. But there's actually a lot of churn going in within that number, right? Like every army's always got a few disabled folks, and it's often at 1,000 or lower, especially in the wintertime, even in winter quarters. I haven't the foggiest idea how Longstreet has 113 wounded guys when he hasn't fought a battle in like 7 or 8 months. But he's got 800 sick guys now. So there's this chronic churn always going on in the brigades of people falling out because they're sick, and then replacements coming in. And it's a little bit transparent to the player, as long as winning all the battles, not losing cities, taking enemy cities, national morale stays high, and state support stays high. What is our support? Yeah. Okay. So the majority of our states are at 100%. Virginia's having a little problem. We need to do something about that, and I've got kind of a plan for that. Kentucky's a little low, although it is coming up. They're up to 69% now. As long as that state support is high and keep kind of a robust residual manpower pool, we have 56,000 in our manpower pool. Those replacements come in fast enough to replace those attrition losses. If I were to completely zero out the manpower pool via recruiting, or if things were going south, and literally going south, and we were losing cities and territory was getting occupied, and state support started dropping, then yeah, maybe that replacement stream would not then keep up with the attrition losses. It's something that just doesn't really jump out at you, so I thought it was worth pointing out. And I think that's about all I really was going to talk about here at the start. Which made me ramble. Still, I rambled on for 25 minutes. Okay, so where are we at? So, at the end of the last episode, we had just had our contracts expire, and it turns out that the Army still remained fairly viable. We did lose a fair amount of men, but at a re-enlistment rate that these corps were not really rendered combat ineffective. Okay? And I had kind of stacked up units at our East and West recruitment commands, kind of ready to deal with whatever happened there. And I wasn't sure if I would need to plug all those brigades into existing corps or create new corps. And it turns out, yeah, we could go ahead and create some additional corps, which is what I've done. So there's a new corps in the east. I've created the 3rd Corps under A.P. Hill, still down here at Richmond, which is where the recruits were, and have created at Nashville Ewell's Corps. So in the east, just big picture, this 3rd Corps gives us the flexibility where we can still maintain our kind of 2-corps posture here close to Washington in Northern Virginia on this side of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And then we can also have a corps kind of covering the Winchester area and able to maybe go a little bit into Western Virginia, that sort of thing. In the West, the overall kind of grand strategy is to finish establishing our control over the Ohio River, and taking Cairo, Illinois is a big piece of that. And the idea is that we would have one army kind of covering this middle Ohio Valley in the Louisville, Covington, Cincinnati area. And then we'd have another army down here kind of covering operating in the Cairo, Evansville area. And at the time, we didn't quite have the forces for that. Now we do. Ewell's Corps gives us that flexibility. Have not created an independent army for this corps yet. That is still yet to come, and that is partially because freaking Stonewall Jackson, I don't know what's up with that guy. He was wounded, and I've pointed this out before. He was wounded like back in July or early August at the latest. He's still not back. He's sipping Mai Tais on a beach somewhere, that guy. He's malingering. No, I'm not saying I'm going to put Jackson in charge of this army, but Jackson coming back will kind of open up the game of musical chairs. I'm kind of thinking Jackson will take the Second Corps over here under Lee, because, that's where he belongs. And then maybe Joe Johnston will come over here and command an independent army in this area, consisting of Ewell's Corps. So that's kind of the broad brush idea. However, the near-term plan, as the campaign season of 1862 opens, is I need to get the Federals out of this northwestern part of Virginia. They hold Grafton, they hold Wheeling, and there is a 30,000 man army here. Can't see it, but we saw it earlier, and this little invasion tab still shows Army of Occupation Strength, 30,000 men. And if we actually click this, it'll kind of center the view on kind of where that army is. So McClellan, if he's still in command of that army, I have no reason to think he isn't. McClellan's still here, and he's got 30,000 men. So what am I going to do about that? Third Corps, I'm going to go ahead and place him under Lee, but I'm going to move him up here, and A.P. Hill is going to operate kind of in the Shenandoah area. May or may not get involved directly against McClellan. There is another army, the last seen, which was months ago now. So there was another army kind of in this area. The Federal Army of the Potomac. It was smaller than McClellan's, but it may be at Cumberland. I'm pretty sure it is at Cumberland. Because if that army were over here at Grafton, it would be showing in this tooltip. But right now there is only one army on Confederate soil, and that is this McClellan army at Grafton. So the Army of the Potomac must be somewhere on Union territory, and that's why I'm guessing probably Cumberland. Or maybe he's over here somewhere. I don't know. He is not here with McClellan. Beauregard, who only has one corps in his army right now, doesn't have the size. He's got 21,000 men, almost 22, but I don't want to push Garnett's corps alone against McClellan, partially because of disparity in troop strength, but also because Garnett's corps has not actually fought a battle yet in this campaign. McClellan's army has. So at least some of the Federal units in this army don't have that first combat nerf to their morale, whereas all of Garnett's units will. but there is a supply issue. There's Union control in this area, and this is all crappy roads and the Appalachians. Even though there's a supply depot at Parkersburg near Marietta, I don't think there's enough supply capacity in this area to support 2 corps. Matter of fact, it's even showing that Garnett's corps is at 94% supply flow, not 100. That may change when time starts rolling. So the first thing I want to do is I think I want Johnston's Army of Tennessee to chase away this West Virginia militia. And what that will do is it will complete the process of establishing 100% control of the upper Ohio as far as Marietta, which rivers are a supply conduit as well. And it will also, I think, give us control of this straight run of railroad to Marietta as well. So once West Virginia militia under Winfield Scott is pushed back somewhere, then one of these 2 corps can continue on to Marietta, join up with Beauregard, and then come over and push McClellan away from Grafton. Meanwhile, there's other Union forces kind of in the Illinois, Indiana area, and for the time being, I'll bring Ewell's corps up to Louisville while Hill and Hardee are addressing Scott. Once this Grafton campaign, mini-campaign, is done with, then at that point, that opens up the ability for the 3rd Corps under A.P. Hill in the Shenandoah and Garnett's Corps to much better support each other across here, because we'll have this railroad link established. Sidney Johnston can then bring this corps back to operate in his AOR, and then that will free up Ewell's corps to come down here and take Cairo. Okay, so that's my plan. And the other thing worth noting is when all of the conscription expirations occurred, which is the first time that I'd seen that in 1.06, wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen to all the weapons. So I pulled all the rifles out of the armies that were in those short-term brigades. And we found out that, no, all those surplus weapons go right into the armory as they should, which was a very welcome thing. And of course, that's what should happen. Just wasn't sure it was going to happen. But now we know that it does. So I have gone back and I have doled all the rifles back out, and actually with the weapons orders I had made, the Fayettevilles came in, the second batch of Springfields came in, the Richmonds came in. Now in the happy situation for the first time in this campaign that all of the infantry in all of the armies, including the 2 new corps, are now rifle armed. Going back to campaign start, if I had maybe done the projects a little bit smarter, maybe I could have achieved that a little bit earlier. But anyway, that's done now. In addition to that, there is no artillery battalion anywhere in the armies that is still armed with the default 6-pound field guns. Most of them are still smoothbores. I still don't have a lot of rifled artillery, but we've got a lot of at least Napoleons out in the armies now, which are smoothbores, but they're a heck of a lot better than the 6-pound field guns. I have not yet received my orders of cavalry weapons. And so all the cav brigades are still on mixed cav weapons. But that'll be pretty soon. I think it's about 3 weeks until our Merrill and Maynard and Jocelyn carbines arrive. And I think that should cover most of the existing cavalry. But there won't be much left over for additional cavalry brigades after that if I want to form a cavalry corps anywhere. Okay, so first things first, let's get 3rd Corps actually under Lee's command in the Army of Northern Virginia. The men haven't actually arrived yet because they're just transferring up from Petersburg. It should just be a day or so. Yeah, one day. They just need to come across the bridge. Alright, so we'll wait a day for his troops to arrive, and then AP Hill will come up here to Winchester. Meanwhile, let's go ahead and bring Hill's Corps up to Cincinnati. And yeah, you can ride the river. That's fine. And Ewell's Corps come up to Louisville. And I think we can leave Ewell's Corps independent for the time being. I don't think we need to put them under Johnston's command. And actually, Johnston himself can come up to Cincinnati as well. Sterling Price's Missouri Army remains essentially a defensive force. Don't have any offensive plans in Missouri for the time being. Don't know if I will, but even if I do, a prerequisite to that is taking Cairo, which should happen later this year. Let's see how this engineer is doing. Have you finished building your... Yep, he's done with the telegraph station here. So we've got a pretty good telegraph network now established in Arkansas and in southern Missouri, which was basically that guy's whole reason for being. And you can see, this was initially a small size brigade. I recruited a 1,500 man brigade here, and he's almost up to full size, almost 2,700 men. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with this guy now. Basically, his mission is complete. And certainly with the cost of things, I don't have any supply depots for him to come build up here. We captured some Union ones. I'm sure not too happy about the idea of building a fort anywhere for the moment. Even at the enormous new cost, I do feel like once Cairo is taken, a fort in this area I might still spend money on that. But you know, we've got these scouts all over the rivers, all around Cairo. They're not seeing any armies. Might be able to just completely ninja this. Tell you what, I hadn't really thought of doing it this way, but let's bring Louis Hebert back over to Memphis for now. Yeah, ride the river and the rails, sure. I wonder if he could just come up here and just take Cairo on his own. We'll see. Alright, let's roll time. And see if our credit rating just drops off a cliff. Apparently for the moment, we're not getting blockaded at all. Seems odd. Yeah, not blocked. Well, is it? Yeah, that's just. It just needs to roll time. We'll be blockaded again momentarily, I'm sure. Our guy probably isn't blockading either up here. No. Okay, the Union has gone for Emancipation Proclamation, which basically just further decreases the likelihood of foreign intervention. And since I wasn't pursuing that anyway, I'm not terribly worried about it. Yeah, there we go. We're blockaded again. And so are the Union ports. Blockade is back into effect on both sides. The Union, supposedly the Union has established well over a dozen naval squadrons in the Massachusetts Bay area. Well, they haven't come down to engage my Atlantic Raider fleet. So what I typically do, and what I think probably most people typically do, is for fleets, you know, you've got this pool of ships over here, the ships in harbor, and then it's to this pool where I build ships out of this menu. And then I pull existing ships over into squadrons. I don't know if the AI does it that way. I think the AI maybe just forms a squadron and then builds ships directly into the squadron. So maybe the reason we haven't seen any of those new federal squadrons up in the New England area is because they formed the squadron, but they're still building the ships for it, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying just to be as charitable as I can on that. Okay, we have got... so the Army of Tennessee is pretty much in position now. Mexico stuff, okay. What is that? Oh, Union has built prison camps. Yeah, well, my intention is to keep those as empty as possible. Right, so the Army of Tennessee is in position. Let's get Hardee back out of defensive stance. Shouldn't take very long. And get him across the river. Interestingly, Hill's Corps is at 100% supply, whereas Hardee's Corps, sitting right here next to the supply depot, is at 95%. What's up with that? Also, before, when you have the when the player has the supply lines displayed, you just used to get this little green line, or sometimes orange line, just showing the link. Now we have these fat arrows that say provisions. That came in this recent update as well. And I don't know. Is this better? Not that I can see. I guess it says, okay, not only are you drawing from this depot, but specifically provisions is what you're drawing. After a battle, we deplete some ammo. Let's see what that looks like. All right, let's get Hardy across the river. Yeah, Winfield Scott, you should get you should be getting nervous. Interestingly, this is apparently a cavalry-only force here. 32nd Army. Any movement in Virginia? Nope. Although McDowell was in he was in entrenched mode before, now he is not. And that army has grown again. Interesting. And you know what? I realized, I had talked about this before. Before coming up to Winchester, I'm going to bring the 3rd Corps down here and take Fort Monroe. I had talked about that an episode or 2 ago, about maybe trying to get to a point where we can chase this blockade fleet away and open up Gosport. And I've got some pretty big ships now, a bunch of frigates, and I think CSS Virginia is complete now to form a fleet at Gosport to come over here and attack this Atlantic blockading squadron. And I'll also be able to form a small fleet to kind of do some initial readiness reducing raids before we bring that big fleet over. But before I can do that, I need to get Fort Monroe out of the way, and that is what AP Hill is going to come do for us. Come on down. Yeah, sure, you can ride the river. It's fine. He's independent. Well, no, he's not independent. Why is it taking 6 hours to get an order from Lee to AP Hill at Richmond? That doesn't seem to make sense. They've got telegraph connectivity. Huh. And their green readiness. Whatever. You know what I'm going to do, though? Because he's about to do a siege, I think I've got a few kind of extra... Yeah, I got a few extra artillery at the recruiting command. Let's chop those over to AP Hill for this siege of Fort Monroe. Well, there we go. They'll arrive at his army long before he actually gets to Fort Monroe. Well, heck, for that matter, I don't see any reason for Griffith to just sit here at Petersburg. Here, come along. Come into Early's division. There you go. One day, yeah. And Hardy's still moving. Okay. Ewell's Corps has arrived at Louisville. Fine. Need to put a... Well, I was about to put a cut in because I need to go do something for a minute. However, I think we've been running almost an hour in this episode. So there you have it. That's kind of what has happened with the update recently. And I think we've got the plan pretty well laid out for the short-term opening moves of 1862, as well as reviewed again kind of the longer-term strategic plan on the Ohio River. And I think that will do for this episode, and I believe in the next episode there will be a siege of Fort Monroe and there will be a battle at Hillsborough. So until then, if you like what we're doing with the channel, like the video, then leave a like, leave a comment, maybe even subscribe if you are so inclined. But at any rate, thank you very, very much for watching. I really do appreciate it.